Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to tonight's episode. All right. So I wanted to speak about the idea of perfection and imperfection. And I thought of the interesting title, Imperfect or I'm Perfect. Literally, they're spelled the same with a bit of space. So what that means is anybody on this planet who has ever thought they are imperfect, they have also been looking at the words I'm perfect. That means imperfection is individual perfection. But I'm going to say it like this. The idea really began for this episode this morning. I was thinking about something that a very fascinating human being by the name of Elon Musk had said once about his business endeavors. Music too intense. All right. Elon Musk, I saw on a YouTube video. They asked him, "How do you run your business?" Like he's done some incredible, genius things when it comes to business, and they asked him, "How do you run your business?" And he said, for example, he has a rocket company, electric car company, many other companies. So he said that something in the lines of most people, they expect that they want perfection. They want their business to succeed, and that desire for the success is like an emotional thing. So, in some sense, people have this expectation of their business to succeed, and they're trying to constantly add to the perfection of their business. But Elon Musk said he actually didn't consider his business was going to succeed. He just started something and he was reducing the percentage of failure. I believe that those were his words. So there's some people who they're like, I want the perfect thing. And they try to run towards it, you know. And so because they want perfection, they notice only imperfection. But now imagine, I mean, first, through the business view, it's as if like the person doesn't have expectations, is just looking at very micro things that they can change to advance the business. Now let's use the metaphor, the same idea. This was the algorithm, and I thought of modifying it, and instead of having this as an idea for just business, don't have expectations on your business. In another way of saying, uh, expect the imperfect and try to like add the perfection little by little, or reduce the imperfection. So I would say the way I saw this apply to the human being, not just to business, is that I noticed that if I choose to expect perfection out of the day, everything can bother me. That means if a person has a specific expectation of how the day should go, how the moment should go, you know, the variables, the unknown factors throughout the day, it's going to make the person feel imperfect. But if the person started off being like, all right, I'm imperfect, the world is imperfect, we're just a bunch of creatures on a rock evolving at a certain stage of our development, do you know? And so if the person had the view on imperfection, that there was, it's going to be imperfect, or how, let me not say imperfect, but let me say it in the sense of, um, I believe it was Shunryu Suzuki or Dogen, one of these dudes, um, one of these Zen masters. They said that life is kind of like you build a boat, and then you get on the boat, you paddle in the middle of the ocean, and it sinks. Okay, this means that the inner realms are expecting a perfection from the outer realms that the outer realms cannot deliver, because we're not immortal beings. Do you know? I sit here in this moment giving these talks, and I've done writings on the side, but I don't know what will happen. I have no idea what will happen beyond my eyes. That's the point of the unknown. It's as if your whole life you have been looking for something. At the end, it's like the real deal. It's arrived. The roller coaster ride has reached fruition, and the pilot must fly on. I saw it in this way. I was expecting perfection from my environment in a certain setting. I'm not saying you shouldn't do this, but I was expecting it. And I noticed that every single thing, everything, like once the inner realms want something from the outer realms, they can, in some sense, the suffering begins. I would say I just changed my view. I noticed that, I mean, I've had this view for a while, but I looked at it in this way, that, okay, instead of thinking the future's going to be perfect, everything's going to be heavenly, it's as if we on earth just reduce the chances of hell, the percentage of hell. Do you know? It's as if the business is going to fail, we just reduce the chances of failure. We don't have too much of an expectation on the future of it. Do you know? It can fail or not fail, we don't know. I would say people should try this out. Things that a person doesn't know and they want practical results from, it comes down to testing. In a strange way, when I look at how a person learns something, it has to come from some sort of need for energy from within the person to engage the realm. I thought about the moment, the year I started these talks. I have no idea how far they're going to go, but I remember in 2014 when I started them, and it's been 6 years now. And I can tell you, during these 6 years, I have seen so many faces face what I've done here. I can't tell you how many people with creative projects, creative ideas, even ideas for communicating online, I have met in these 6 years, and how many of them did not endure, you know? And this is really the truth of it. If you are doing something for just your outer realms, its motivation is conditional. Once the circumstance changes, your motivation is gone. If you were trying to make someone happy, the moment they're happy, the motivation is gone. The moment they are whatever, the motivation is gone. I noticed that for me, I had no expectation of my own efforts. So, like a fool, for 6 years, I've been like, okay, next step, next step. One foot over another. You know? And most people, they give up because their perfection doesn't come instantly. Even myself, in other areas of my life, I've given up instantly, but in other areas, like, you know, like a workaholic from another dimension. So, guys, the main point really is that if you expect perfection, you'll get pissed off so much. You know, even if you expect perfection from yourself, that means for me, the only time I would say I have felt that universally there has been a perfect moment when there was no one to question the moment. That means, have you noticed that when someone does something alone, let's say when the person, this happened to me years ago when I was just learning to drive, you know, and drive a vehicle, and when you learn to drive at first, your attention is inside the vehicle more, and you're nervous and you're trying to do everything right. And so I remember anytime I would drive alone, the comfort was different, as if I was the major pilot in the moment, moving the moment. But anytime when I was there where there was a driving instructor or whatnot, then I became some sort of, like, I don't know, artificial half-made robot in the process. Do you know what I mean? Like, there would be there would be something that when there were other eyes, the free will didn't feel the same. So, let's say you're a person who's suffering. You're like, gosh, this lighter doesn't work. Let's say, but if I feel like, hey, it's just a lighter, they work, sometimes they don't, then you see the suffering goes away. Epictetus, this Stoic philosopher, Greek philosopher, he said a quote which I would say it was like even wisdom would slow hand clap. Like the quote was, we suffer not from the events inside our life, but we suffer from the judgments we have about them. We don't suffer because of what's happening to us, pretty much. We suffer because of how we're interpreting what's happening. If you use this kind of hilariously, in quotations, imperfect algorithm, the person can't lose if they don't have the vision of victory. It's like someone who isn't in the game can't lose the game. This is another way of saying, like in religion, this had parallels in the sense that there was this story, this Christian missionary back in the day is going and spreading the teachings of Christ. And so what happens is that in a situation, there's like Native Americans back in the day trying to integrate into Western, what should I say, into the modern world culture of that time. And pretty much the missionary priest goes to this native and says, you must, in some sense, believe in Christ, or in some sense your soul is lost, you're damned. There's a sort of pretty much the idea of you do the right thing or you go to hell. And in that moment, the native asks a question from the priest, and he's like, what about children? Children don't know about this. Like, do children go to hell? Like young children who can't speak yet? And the missionary says, no, they don't know anything yet. They're too young. They don't know anything. They don't go to hell. Then the native's like, why did you tell me then? That means the idea was you didn't play the game until the game was introduced. Right? And so we are opening our eyes in a world where there's endless games introduced. I'm telling you, there is no good or bad people. There are just beings that are trying to somehow do something with their inner realms and the outer realms. That is it. That means, honestly, if there was no pain, there would be no fighting. We would just be sight moving around. It would be ridiculous. The species has something to lose. This is why people have a reason to freak out in this world. But if the species didn't have anything to lose, imagine, you suddenly was the beginning of the hunter-gatherer societies. It's like you don't think about the day. Let's say you were a future time traveler and you went back, okay, to the beginning where there were hunter-gatherer societies happening. As a future time traveler, you wouldn't worry about AI at that stage. And so it's based on our advancement. The more we have built, the more there is to lose. Same thing with relationships. The more you are with someone, when there's more to lose emotionally afterwards. Perfection is really personal. You can personally feel perfect at any moment, The other day I did a perfect stretch, So when it comes to perfection in the inner realms, oh my God, any moment you can feel like a king based subjectively, But in your outer realms, to feel like a king, it's like, no way, Jose, kind of situation. I can't tell you in how many imperfect moments I have walked in this life. Like, like moments where I was like literally, I felt like the world just moved past me. I was like, what just happened? You know, like those kind of moments. You see, there's an imperfection where you get a contrast and you can use that imperfection to counter the moment and activate it differently. But there's an imperfection that doesn't see perfection anymore, and that imperfection is lost to its own will. You know, some problems in life, they arise because based on how our attention pilots in the outer realms. Some problems arise in the inner realms based on how the pilot is choosing to be. You know, that means it's like there's think of it this way: if right now in front of you a bunch of people who knew parkour started just like, I don't know, flipping in the air and doing whatnot, right? You would be like, oh my god, that's like, you'd get fascinated if you had never seen parkour, right? Now imagine you imagined a bunch of people doing parkour in front of you and you got fascinated by that, right? That means here's the cool thing in life: we are actually, it's impossible to be reality when how we know the presence of the present, the moment that is present, how we know it is based on the past. That means the past is tainting the novelty of the future. So in some sense we have to kind of let go, have our hands open, pick up something new, then let go of that and be like, okay, how do we hold both of these in our hands, you know? I had a conversation through my writings with, I would say, my heart of hearts, the Logos. And for a moment, I asked, it was like an intellectual question. There is something we intellectually are not seeing that is blocking the heart, believe it or not. And I asked, in some sense, the Logos, what is the point of an endless story? Because that is what we find ourselves in. In front of our eyes, it's an endless physical story. Behind our eyes, it's an endless, in some sense, or in some sense, a subjective story, or even so unknown. It's just the viewer, the storyteller. Behind our eyes, we're the storyteller of our perception. In front of our eyes, we are the character in the story. And it's a weird time. It's a time where I honestly, when I see people, for me, it's reached a point where I don't only see their body, I'm just curious to see in the moment the other person's going to speak, what kind of linguistic Iron Man suit they are wearing. You know, the thing is that if a human being communicates just for 1 minute, you can notice where their inner eyes are looking at. You know, I'll give you an example. Let's say you're talking to someone and they're nodding, they're like but you know that their attention is not there with you in that moment, right? So that's their inner eyes being on the next moment, or visualizations on probabilities of how this moment can turn. For me, it's like it's not enough to just have hope, and hope is very important, of course, but I'm saying it's not enough to just have an emotion for a world that is way more multidimensional than the emotions. You know, I feel that people have not noticed that their life doesn't belong to them. That means even though the idea of me as an unknown witness, unknown presence of a witness in this moment, is knowing that this biological body is in my domain of free will, in my sphere of free will, but this body, its elements do not belong to me. Nobody owns atoms. We are atomic, but when it comes to ownership, that is a dimension. That is like, if Darwin was alive, like, I don't know how Darwin didn't freak out. And let me tell you why. Because the thing is, evolution has made an object become a subject to itself in the complex capacity that, like a seed in the soil, there was already the design of a brain. You know what it is? There's this view that there's either something secretive going on, or it is that the brain is the world. That means we may not realize it, but the whole universe may look very similar to an organ. And I don't mean like a musical organ. Now, let's say you're a person who you use this model, you try it out. One day you go like, okay, life has to be like, this world is perfect, right? And every moment's gonna be perfect. Live like that for one day, and then live one day where everything from the beginning is imperfect. There's nothing you can get angry about, because if you wanted to get angry, you could get angry about the whole world, you know? The person just needs to find an object that doesn't correlate to their view of a subject, and they can get angry. That's it. That's how easy it is to get angry on this planet. And it's easy because we think we're language. People drive cars, they don't think they're their car, you know? People speak, but they think they're their words. They don't realize that it's just a vehicle of expression for the moment. Language is, we have made too much of a big deal where we're trying to extract the secrets of our souls really from it. And honestly, the thing is that it's like a weapon that must be put down from a war that never existed. That is the thing about language. It's a suffering that never had to just be in that way. I got a very important clue, a mystical clue. And that mystical clue is that all of civilization is based on knowledge. And so the moment we wonder about the reverse, that means think of being a human being who you've seen very, as a kid, I remember I would look up to various people. And when I say I would look up to them, I would look up to them, believe it or not, at that young age in a selfish way, where I wanted the skill, but I didn't really care for the person, you know. not for example like people close to me, but it was as if like I would see somebody do a bicycle kick, and for me it was like whoever they were, that was its own room, and the bicycle kick was its own room, you know, had its own value. It's like some people like the artwork because of the artist, some people like the artwork because of the artwork, you know. It doesn't matter, the artist is gone and changed and has become a totally different person, but the artwork is the artwork, you know. And they say this, the moment your artwork leaves you, what that means, it goes into the public, it is no longer yours. That means the moment these talks, the moment I speak and the video is out, that's the moment where I have literally said like goodbye to like my eldest son, for example, leaving. You know, I don't have children, but I'm saying it feels like the moment the content, the design is there, the design can stand on its own, and then it's the will of nature that what happens next, you know. For me, preferencelessness is an incredible word. I would tell you that that was a very profound wisdom for me. That when you are in a simulation or any type of moment where what you're doing doesn't work, you stop the attempt. It doesn't mean you completely stop. What it just means that you stop the approach in eyes that could not see the solution. Kind of like how Albert Einstein says you cannot solve a problem from the same level of consciousness that in some sense created it. That means you gotta change. You gotta literally, the solution is a new self technically, because you need new eyes. You need eyes that have noticed some additional dimension, and the moment you notice an additional dimension, it's like adding a drop of water to the ocean. Like it's felt everywhere. This civilization currently we have, I call it Civilization 1.0. Civilization 1.0 isn't bad, but it's a civilization that has failed to go on its own. That means it's as if like a younger brother went out, to do something, and the younger brother has reached a point where he doesn't know what to do. Now, Civilization 2.0 is going to be like the older brother. And what the older brother does is that it sees comfortably what the younger brother has done, and then also the additional dimensions of the older brother are implemented. That means we take care of the past, and we assure the past that there's don't freak out, you know. Then the not big brother Orwellian, but the older brother advanced civilization. This world animates in accordance to effort. This is the hidden law. This is what every child knows but forgets the moment their eyes belong to words. And so we are oscillating between the direct experience of worlds and the indirect, excuse me, we are oscillating between the direct existence of the world and the indirect experience of words. And so I want people to just try to act as right now, whoever you are listening, just do something for me. This is a once in a lifetime request. Just try to grab the air in front of you. Just grab empty space. And if anybody's done that, just, you can, if you care, you can let me know in the chat section. And let me tell you why I'm asking you to do this. Because that is what wanting subjective truth out of objects feels like. That is what the linguistic simulation feels like. We cannot grab it, yet it has grabbed us. It has defined everything. If language was an alien, oh my God, this alien has already programmed everything. It's like, it's done. We're done, I'm telling you. Do you know that means if an advanced alien civilization, okay, and let's say they weren't enlightened, they were like, rude or something, a rude advanced civilization would come to our turf. And let's say that rude civilization, like that extraterrestrial civilization was going to attack, they don't even need to attack us. They just need to come and twerk with the programming of the language. That's how statue-like we have become after object worship into the movement of idea worship. From idols into ideas. I remember once I threw a small apple into a river. And it was not a river, kind of like a river dash stream. And the water of the river was intelligent. The water of the river, let me say it like this. The water of the river was moving the apple, and the apple was, in my view, from someone looking at the stream or whatever, like it was dodging all the rocks. So it felt to me like the higher dimensions are currents, and they are currents where we journey through. So think of it, something that the human beings may have never thought. They have thought of building vehicles in the world. But how many human beings have thought of using the world as a vehicle? Using the whole world, the whole moment, as is at your disposal for the great alchemy. And there's only one alchemy. I mean, they did say it, that back in the day they would turn lead into gold. Other schools of thought disagree. Some schools of thought agree. But the whole metaphor for it was a mystical one. And the metaphor was that the whole nature of lead has to transform to gold. Lead becomes gold, for example, to the alchemist, right? So in some sense, there is no a loss, or there is no a defeat or attaining victory. There is just a state becoming another state. And a person who understands this will have a sort of gentle walk on this earth, because you will notice that you are an energetic being before you even know what the word energy is. You're being here before you do things to comprehend even how you're being here, right? So there's a significance to that, a significance where too many continental philosophers have tried to keep alive. That means for me, philosophers, you know who they were? They were the honest people. For me, philosophers, they have been the backup system, right? Where they could see that the multidimensional could be alive. Do you know? Because you can select the side of a coin, but then you miss out on the other side. But the philosopher was like, I could see this side of the coin, I could see that side of the coin, I could even see this little middle space too. You know, where the coin could just stand in between those two sides. We used to be just pretty much stuff. we used to be stuff just moving in the world, you know. Then we became conscious, we're stuff, you know. So technically right now we're conscious stuff. Now the next phase, I mean, think about it. There was a physical movement and non-physical movement. And we can say that the movement of the body is a communication of the world. The movement of the mind is a communication from beyond the world. That means it's like two movements, two simultaneous movements. It's as if we have two lives in two dimensions and we're living them in one room. So technically we're in two rooms, but one world. See guys, these are mystic problems, you know. For some concepts never need to exist. That is freedom. You free the language from itself. And you free the language of the world from you even. There will come a day, I feel that happens usually when a person transitions out, right? Who they are, whatever psyche they have. The psyche, like a candle, lingers. But once the candle melts, the work was done, whatever it was. It's as if it doesn't matter. It's like, you know what it is? It's like an exam, right? But imagine it's taking the whole lifetime to write down this exam, and at the end of time, it's as if time is up, literally. Do you know? And so you drop the pen and you watch how the masterpiece unfolds. You know, in Buddhism, there was this idea of the person who wants to know their future life just has to look at their present conditions. That means you want to know your future. It's a suggestion of how you are emerging now as a creature. Guys, we're gonna go into the Dalai Lama, uh, the Dalai Lama's inner realms. um, so we're gonna go into a quote tunnel. I'm gonna read some quotes from the Dalai Lama. Not specifically the Dalai Lama. There's a whole Tibetan tradition, of course. The Dalai Lama. This is the 14th emanation. Wisdom at its core is a field, so it's inseparable. This is why endless beings, in order to understand the true intelligence of this universal sector, have to cross the veil of oneness. That means who knew even non-duality is a veil. Alright. Just a second, guys. I'm trying to find this. There we go. This is a good moment for the audience to practice a meditative silent mind. Okay. Lao Tzu, when you realize nothing is lacking, the whole world belongs to you. This is a Zen proverb, let go or be dragged. Confucius says, what the superior man seeks is in himself, what the small man seeks is in others. Go within, guys. Bodhidharma says, to seek is to suffer, to seek nothing is bliss. Satya Sai Baba says, mind is like a mad monkey. Wei Wu Wei says, wise men don't judge, they seek to understand. It's not just wise men, it's just like any human being who cares to know what's going on. They need to seek to understand the moment first. Huang Po says, when thoughts arise, then do all things arise. When thoughts vanish, then do all things vanish. Maxime Lagos says, wherever you are, it's the place you need to be. Existence is probably high-fiving. That's true, guys. This is the most important thing about Zen, that when time is out of the picture, Every moment is like the right moment. But if there's a certain specific outcome, then the moment is not the right moment until the specific outcome. You know, it's like until you type in the proper code for the vending machine, like the item's not gonna drop. You know. Confucius says the noble-minded are calm and steady. Little people are forever fussing and fretting. Jack Kerouac says rest and be kind. You don't have to prove anything. Pema Chodron. Nothing ever goes away until it has taught us what we need to know. Meister Eckhart. Only the hand that erases can write the true thing. Lao Tzu says, where can I find, oh sorry, not Lao Tzu, Chuang Tzu says, where can I find a man who has forgotten words so I can talk with him? Dogen says, when we discover that the truth is already in us, we are all at once our original selves. Rumi, life is a balance of holding on and letting go. Eckhart Tolle, wherever you are, be there totally. Zen Master Dogen, I live by letting things happen. This is the most important quote, guys. This is the whole, even for those shamanically interested, without this quote, you will never see, I wouldn't say never, but you won't have the patience to see the depths of your own mind before the world has defined it to you. Lao Tzu, oh sorry, Buddha. Buddha says before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. The Buddha doesn't actually say this, which is making me doubt the sources of these quotes. But anyways, Ming Dao Deng, who you are is always right. Eric Hoffer, the search for happiness is one of the chief sources of unhappiness. Dr. Seuss, and when, oh, okay, this is just universal, I think, at this point. Dr. Seuss says, and when they played, they really played. And when they worked, they really worked. These are like guidelines to the advanced civilization. Dr. Seuss was onto something. Excuse me, guys, I was reading and this was on mute. So I literally said a bunch of things, and the context of the talk is in a different place in my mind now, but let's begin with the universal. What does the human species deserve to itself? What does it deserve to others, the world? What others in the world? What does it deserve to the planet? You know, or I would say that man's civilization, then what does it deserve to the planet? That means, let's say we just built an advanced civilization right now. That advanced civilization has a simultaneous relationship with the nature of the world. That means there will be a day where I'm sure history, certain blank pages in history, in future history books, are waiting to be filled by people who are gonna be like, oh my God, the earth is alive when we are. You see, it's like to care for the planet is an honor. You know, it's the honor of a lifetime. How many planets do you get? Do you know? So it's as if like the people care about their rooms, you know. You know, Jordan Peterson, when he was debating with Slavoj Žižek, both very profound and incredible communicators. Jordan Peterson in his book had written this idea that the human being should start from an individual level, and of course he's a psychologist. And he said that like a simple way of saying that deep insight was to clean your room. I mean, start from something small, displaying control in something small, and go bigger, you know. Now Slavoj Žižek, this guy is more, you could say he's looking at it more from like a bird seeing it, not from a person in a room, but from a bird in the sky looking at society. More in a social view, from a social lens. Slavoj Žižek says you can't tell people in North Korea to clean their room, you know. and Jordan, Mr. Jordan Peterson and Mr. Slavoj Žižek were pretty much countering. Slavoj Žižek was saying you got to fix the collective. Jordan Peterson was saying you got to fix the individual. And guess what? They were both right. There was no point for their debate. You know. For me, I implement an algorithm where I used to feel like I know the world and I know myself. Now it has reached a point where that previous sort of knowing, that search for wanting to know more, that has kind of changed. It's no longer who eats the most cookies, you know, of knowledge. You know, it's more like we don't fill up our minds with information we don't need. We ask questions from within the being will find the person. If you live enough and you're simple and you haven't exiled decency of your inner child yet, you know, every person, a deep question will find them. It's as if it's like everybody has a question, karma. You know, imagine people said there was the idea of like back in the day, everybody had a guardian angel or something like that. In traditional thought, they had this view. Now, instead of guardian angel, imagine every person has a great question, a great universal question that will come and find them. That means every person's eyes is seeing the top of the mountain. It doesn't mean every person is going to get to the top of the mountain in the same way. You know, and imagine 8 billion beings climbing to the peak of this mountain of evolution, right? And now some people have come and they've built giant staircases and people are just going up the staircases. Some people are like, no, you know, it's not about the staircase, it's about the novelty. You know, it's as if like you lose nothing by being new, but when you repeat the past, you miss the new. Because the past is here. The past has been done. It's as if, imagine everybody on the planet was making, I don't know, paper airplanes. Eventually somebody was like, God damn it, you know, let's make the real thing, you know. Can you imagine? Probably the Wright brothers tested the airplane. Like, I think that could have fascinated their mind, you know. One of the Wright brothers as a kid was, imagine running with a stack of papers, like, I don't know, from the top of, like, from I don't know, some balcony area, the papers fell. Then both Wright brothers looked at the paper flying there, and they were like, holy shit, you know, we can fly in a plane, in a plane-like way, literally, you know, airplane, you know. So I'm telling you, there's, those questions were like, can it be done, and will it? These two questions bring forth, I would say, the life force of innovation. And some moments, you know, a person can have a slow judgment, like, for example, in certain bad relationships, the one side just forgives, the other side just takes. One side just gives, so the other side takes, right? So in those relationships, like, forgiving is like, in some sense, allowing what was taken to be taken. Do you know? But then there's this situation where in a relationship where one side takes and the other side doesn't, the life one person is living alone. So you can say there's no such thing as bad relationships, you know. There's just relationships where the two people are not in the same room anymore, you know, in the same room of an ultimate value, that the journey together unknown is like, has become less than, for example, variation. What I'm trying to say is that knowledge is a great actor. But the unknown is the real stage. And imagine you have been acting for eons, the same thing, you know, the same pattern looping. For me, it's literally like, the biological body is really an Iron Man suit. And inside this Iron Man suit, let's say there's a, I don't know, a golden suit, gold man suit. And pretty much I'm treating it as rooms. That means my body is living in the world, my mind is living in my body, and the unknown witness finds itself present through the mind that glows like a candle flame. Literally, biological body is the candle wax, mind is the candle flame. The mind is like some spherical glow. It's like, that's how awareness comes across. From Hagakure, the Book of the Samurai. If a warrior is not unattached to life and death, he will be of no use whatsoever. Yamamoto Tsunetomo says. This is from Shunryu. The next quote is from Shunryu Suzuki. The mind of the beginner is empty, free of the habits of the expert, ready to accept, to doubt, and open to all the possibilities. And that's the point. The last thing we want is cloning on this planet. Like, that would be so impure. Like, this, it would be kind of a bit disgusting to live in a species, you know, that in some sense has forgotten the unique novelty of life. And it's not disgusting because clones shouldn't exist or whatnot, and like, if clones have free wills through AI in the future, should they exist or not? No, I'm not talking about that. It's just that we forgot that we could use our true nature rather than our artificial echo. I mean, you can say technically an echo is a clone of a sound, you know. Is a sound cloning itself in different moments of space and time. Lao Tzu says, if you're depressed, you're living in the past. If you're anxious, you're living in the future. If you're at peace, you're living in the present. But what if when you truly lived in the present, you realized the past and future were simultaneous, so you could instantly fathom the past, fathom the future, yet see the present? They're all waves of the present. You see, really, this is life. Like, let's see what if we were to look at it. Let's say there's a person, we call this person X or XYZ. Person XYZ is going in life, and they are not some, let's say, some special superhero or something like that. They're just this simple creature. And what's going to happen? This creature is going to do things in the world, do things in the world. Then it's going to come to a point where it's going to start doing things slower. Then once it has done things slower, it's eventually going to stop. It's like a bowling ball, but there was nowhere else. Like a bowling ball, imagine on an endless alley, like bowling alley. Right, so it's like you what's the bowling? I don't know what you call it. You know what I mean, though. Like, so it's like a bowling ball that over time there is enough tension and friction that it slows down. So the friction of life has an impact. Me talking right now, me doing whatever I'm doing right now, there's a friction. It's like every day you live, it's like you started off as this mighty statue, and it's like little chunks are falling off. Do you know? And this is in time. It's not in the outer realms. It's just how we start off as bodies. We require to be comfortably stationed as minds, then witness the events continuity as a mind. So what does that mean? That means it is okay to live as a body that is projecting a mind, but that is witnessing a mind. Okay? But I would say the moment the person gets to 50, let's say a lifespan of 100, the person then needs to start being a mind that is watching how the body happens, right? So if a young child becomes a mind too quick and doesn't get to actually live the life of the body, that's a shame, right? So it's literally like a bell curve, you know, or a triangle without the third horizontal line, you know. We move towards something. That means whoever you are listening to me, use your energy for something here in this world. Now, how you use it, it suggests if it's going to push back our civilization to the Stone Ages, or we're going to try to, you know, high five with the folks on Star Trek. Like, oh, so, you know, really the behavior is the program. It's as if we don't realize our free will is like the programmer coding itself in the outer realms in accordance to the inner realms. So think of it this way: there's unknown free will, like a programmer on a like someone coding, like on a computer writes a code, inner realm code, and then the inner realm code allows outer realm access. Okay, now the person writes a code in the outer realms. The outer realms access allows for suddenly there to be the inner realms and outer realms at the same time. That means literally like how people sit down and code. That's another sort of, you could say, micro-managed piloting of your attention. You see, the attention can evoke giant context. Like, here's the thing. For me, for example, if let's say there was a president of a, I don't know, some president walking by in the street, and suddenly the president out of nowhere came to shake my hand, right? And imagine if I had grocery bags in my and I'd shake the president's hand with grocery bags being on like my palm area. Do you know what I mean? Like this kind of like jacked like handshake, you know? But I'm joking, guys. What I'm trying to say is, if suddenly I noticed there was someone who is walking in a very important way, I would see the halls of their forefathers. This is something where You can say certain poets have used it for their ancestry, but I use it for the future. That means if you saw someone, whoever they are, whether you liked or disliked them, and you suddenly saw that, oh my God, this person was a kid, this person has grown into whoever they are now, this person is going to get old and die, but then they're going to have grandkids, you know, they're going to have and their grandkids are going to have grandkids. And so you see, every person is so important to the species and its advancement. That means think of like people being like, oh my God, you know, a species of wild birds are dying, you know, in the Amazons, in the trees that are burning. Do you know so many species are burning in like are dying in burning forests or whatnot, right? So now imagine how many human beings, the most important species of them all, how many human beings, they either fail to see their value or they cannot walk in a world of failure. That means it's like whatever it is, it's like take it to a design level and it's just landscape that needs to be plowed through. Anytime you take it out of the design level, emotions arise, you can personify, you can see angels and demons to even a cup of coffee. You know what I mean? Like you can, the mind can play. But the mind that plays in a way that works collectively, oh my God, that is like, we are 8 billion explorers. We have been conned by our ecosystem. You know, by the nature of how the world is just being received as an image. You're not an image, dear listener, but you have witnessed them from the beginning. Alan Watts says man suffers only because he takes seriously what the gods made for fun. Osho says don't seek, don't search, don't ask, don't knock, don't demand, relax. So yeah, sometimes when we, that preferencelessness I told you, that's kind of like you seeing what you are before you are anything. Alan Watts says muddy water is best cleared by leaving it alone. This could mean that certain situations, like it's best that time heals the person. You know, some moments where, like sometimes I've been personally upset and people have tried to intervene, right? And of course, it's the person has to at some point lose their grip on how they have held their mindset, regardless of how intense they are. But it's like some moments it takes time, and I will tell you, I've had moments where I've had to sit down and literally for 10 to 20 minutes and emotion to just finish what it's doing. That means imagine you get angry, and this anger is like a domino effect, right? Somebody says something to you that is like dismissing the value of various memories of yourself, not just who you are in the present, but who you have been also, right? And so that creates a domino effect of like pretty much all the versions of you in your memories wanting to be aggressive. You know, and they wonder where the power in angry people comes from. So the thing is, like, the person has to realize the inevitable and they'll instantly calm down. That's what I'm saying. If you think the world has to be perfect, we can suffer, you know. I talk about an advanced civilization, but I'm kind of like just putting the idea out there, and I'm like, okay, what's going to happen? Let's see, like, kind of that kind of vibe. But in any moment, like, you know, we're at an interesting time where you ask people, what's the most important thing? People anywhere on the planet, I'll make this general. Okay, you ask them what's the most important thing, and they'll be like, freedom, freedom, you know, or what do you want? Freedom. Everybody's shouting freedom. But if you ask, what would you do after you got your freedom? People have not thought that far. They have thought of getting to freedom, trying to buy freedom, you know, but they have not realized what will you do with it after. You see, and what if once you received freedom, you were free? And that's the point. That means instead of us thinking, oh no, we have to save the world or we're doomed. No, 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 no. You are free. You can choose to help. You can choose to serve the civilization, or you can choose to even go to your inner realms. And advanced civilization is not holding people like a hostage in inefficient looping systems. It's like, that's so boring, you know. An advanced civilization would kind of be like the what was it called? The Opius. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right. The Opius mutiny for Alexander the Great. Was it Alexander the Great? Yeah, it was Alexander the Great. The Opius mutiny. Pretty much his men. Alexander the Great was this great conqueror, right? And so there's a situation where he has conquered a lot, but he's reaching a point where his men are doubting him and they're leaving. They've decided to leave him, right? And Alexander the Great just comes on stage and he says, like, I can't repeat the speech, but I could tell you, like, the way my eyes saw it, inner eyes saw it. Alexander the Great was saying, you guys can all leave, but before you leave, remember what I have done for you and what you have done for me. And then Alexander the Great goes into this next level speech of talking about his father before him and whatnot, and what he conquered, and then what his father conquered, and how they were like very primitive and they were just like agricultural level. Then they came to an empire level. Then Alexander the Great came into power and expanded the empire, right? And so they've been, all the people who've been following him, they've pretty much been like, you know, Viking style, like getting rich from conquering land or whatever. But so, and back in the day, in ancient Greece, what was important was like, right now people can have citizenship, but back then you couldn't, right? So citizenship was like a huge thing. So it was as if like he had taken nomads and people who were nobody into the point where they had become people in a city or whatnot. And at the end of this like intense, like hammer hitting the table kind of speech, do you know, at the end of it he says, if you want to leave, leave, but tell them, do you know, you left your commander after he had done all this, you know, something like that. And I feel that's what an advanced civilization's attitude is going to be. It's going to look at the citizen and be like, okay, you have lived here, right? And it's fine, you can choose not to continue. But if the advanced civilization, I'm talking about the future here, guys, if the advanced civilization has served you, then you choose. Your heart speaks louder than your intellect can act. That is the truth of nature. It displays what it has to in the moment. It doesn't matter how smart the person is, how witty he is, nature happens and goes forth. That is the one true, I would say, revelation, that it all goes forth. So there is nothing to fear. The person in the life, person XYZ, just to finish that metaphor, I just noticed. At the end of life, we may not be people anymore. So the advantage of humanhood is rare. You know, we have found ourselves in the most sophisticated instrument as an unknown intelligence. We don't even know if we're all at the edge of our minds one field or not, you know. But energy seems to not be separate, so it's a strange situation overall, really. You see, in the Bhagavad Gita, they had this saying, they're like, if you worship a god in the afterlife, that god will handle you. But if the person just goes directly to the absolute, as if it is all here, there is nothing hidden. Call it simulation, call it a dream, call it whatever you like. The dream requires some truth somewhere to keep the dream, some awakening to keep the dream. That means we are technically asleep to ourselves, but never in the truth of the presence of what's going on here. And the healthiest way the species can treat the multidimensionality of the world is that this is the room. This is our room for now, and there's more rooms, as if like we're one room in a giant mansion, imagine. You know? And one thing is very like obvious, that the biggest thing the person may regret in life is like, if you're not true to yourself, you may regret it. If you're not true to others, you may regret it. So eventually the situation comes, just live as a true moment. And so the truth of this moment, I feel, leaves the presence of the attention at a piloting position, where now, instead of people thinking it has to be a perfect world and you know, we have to try to stop the imperfection, or if we think it's an imperfect world and we build the perfection slowly, whatever kind, these two algorithms can be used. You can pilot between it. We have reached a point now where people imagine like belief systems are like a painting where a person is held with both their hands. Now, this painting they've brought so close to their face that they don't see anything. Like the painting is inches away from their face. They can't even see the outline of the painting they're holding, right? So the point is, before people try to get rid of the ego, they just slowly, like that painting close to their face, bring it down, bring it back. That means before you get rid of anything, first figure out what it is. It's the same with judging people as well, you know. We can judge people like a cobra, instant, like an instant snap, just judge the whole nature of the person. Or we can, like a sloth, like a sloth, we can you know, the purpose of this world is not just to be alive. It used to be. If we hadn't been conscious of our sense of self, if no sense of self had emerged, we were still, nature was moving us before we were moving ourselves, then the purpose of life would just to be alive. But now that there is the additional observing dimension, it's as if the first thing the human being has to do is to try to notice what is different from other animals and what is different from the human being. And it's really an ability to control the speed of our observation. Animals don't know, not that they don't know, but it's as if they don't have a concept of time. Pretty much all animals are in the here and now. But it was man who could suddenly notice that the candle is going to melt before the candle melted. And it was that sort of psychological observation, or it was that observation that really differentiated us. That means technically we're like a creature like other creatures on this planet, but our behavior is so different than other creatures because we have not just an objective environment that influences us, but our own subjective interpretation of the objective environment. And so it's like the person, it's like the body and the mind are like two hula hoops, like spinning around like the presence of the ultimate soul. The body wants to continue just existing. The mind just continues to just want to experience. So the beyond has to be beyond these two wants. So true mysticism is to wonder how your experience is beyond your existence, how your existence is beyond your experience, and how beyond existence and experience and their endless dance, there is a room with a freedom that could never cry in this dimension. We know that energy just is waving. You look at ocean waves, you get the picture straight away. Life is just an opportunity. There is no fixed story to it. We either care for what is in front of us, this 4.5 billion year old science project, or I don't know, we'd let it be captured by smoke. That means to me, I would say right now, a perfect sentence, I thought the advanced communicators are the heroes of the mind of civilization. We are self-simulating creatures. Like that's what free will is doing. Free will is pretty much doing what the gene is doing, but it's doing it as a subject somehow. Okay, so free will for me is a sort of personification of the genetical pattern. So this is it. So just like we have self-replicating genes. I feel that when people look at others and they get an impression of them, technically the same thing as the self-replicating gene is happening, but it's happening subjectively, in which we never see people how they see themselves. We see how we see them. You know. Krishnamurti evidently would say true observation is like an ultimate solution. That if we're suffering, there is something we haven't truly observed about the moment. And I don't know how many people have really just tried to see who they are in their most simplest way, the simplest way their mind knows how. That means It's like no need for the word meditation. Just remember a simpler moment in your life and wonder from there. You know, if the complexity is turbulent to pilot through. So let's say those two things I said, and I'm gonna end it, I guess, after this. But so imagine an imperfect world, and you're just trying to increase the percentage of, or you're trying to reduce the percentage of imperfection. That means even no expectation on perfection. The person's like, all right, what can I do? This is how far the civilization's updated. All right, you know. So the imperfection no longer is a bother. So the person's mind stops wasting energy in wanting the world to be something it is not. So you'll actually have a lot of energy in momentary, moment to moment, trying to reduce the imperfection. And a day where everything is perfect, of course, you're gonna become like God's judgment on earth. The people who are seeking perfection, you know, they're gonna find themselves in moments where their art can possess them. Their, you know, if the attention is not piloted properly, energy is just left to its own will of just animating. That means there's some people who I would say maybe in the future we're gonna see this. Imagine the Zen mind, Zen masters suddenly began becoming interested in shamanism, you know, and in Native American native shamanism. All right, shamanism. So the thing about that would be a situation where the Zen mind is first noticing emptiness, then becoming incredibly grateful for what is there. Right? So there's a sort of easy way of having inner peace in life through Zen. But the shamanic mind has still a depth of honesty with the unknown. That means something very messed up that I thought maybe the spirit of nature wanted I don't know, it's very complex. When you look at a collective view, you cannot blame anything. When you look at an individual view, you can blame everything. To just be able to pilot your attention as a being. And the attention, it's like everybody's DNA is different, so there's technically no teaching. It's just you get to know how your eyes move and you move with it. I'm just saying that it's like beyond the body's life and the self-obsession for the body's advancement, there's also the mind's advancement. And this is the case I find. Anytime somebody wants to find something from the outer realms that they actually need to find from the inner realms from within, everybody becomes a snake oil salesman. Because the answers come from within. The questions, they come from outside. But the answer, the retaliation of the life force to the living moment, as how Rumi says, wherever you are, be the soul of that moment. And you know, this may not be the perfect advice that everything is just seen in one way. Really, you gotta also let the world breathe in you, in your eyes. You know, this is why for me, language is like a paint, and my voice is like the paintbrush, and the hand that's moving it is like my inner vision from an unknown view. So believe it or not, I'm living my known life from an unknown view, guys. I think we all are. We just don't realize. you can have this view that we accept everything is unknown. We don't freak about or obsess or glorify knowledge. We just reduce the percentage of how much it's unknown by having conscious exhibitions into the unconscious, the collective unconscious. Literally, if we can get a self-sustaining, explore-generating ideological algorithm, when I say explorer generating, literally an ideological system that makes the person want to be an explorer, then the species wins. That's like bingo right there. Self-sustaining wonder. That means, imagine there was an inventor, and let's call this the wondrous inventor, and this inventor had realized that in a state of wonder everything is possible, and so this inventor wanted to build a device, you know, this device, but instead of like a mad scientist, like a compassionate scientist, yeah, this device that in some sense would make every person in every belief system like literally as if an explosion of a light wind, a wind made of light, just hit every person like a wave on this planet. And everybody suddenly became wondrous. We would be even wondrous to preserve the past. That means from a state of advancement, it's like the advancement has such pride, but its pride is not selfish, it's collective. Because it's collective, it can't leave the past behind. So an advanced civilization wants to be so advanced when it looks in the mirror that it managed to take care of the past, the present, and the future. And through the recognition that the ultimate work is really a present event. It's not like nobody's late for existential work, you know. Nobody's late to existing. We exist, and then our experience simulates the value systems. So anyways, guys, thanks for listening. I hope this episode was helpful. And as the great poet Rumi says, you were born with wings. Why prefer to crawl through life? That means it's like the mediocre is technically being it's like this Elder Scroll. Sorry guys, one last thing I gotta say before there was this, I don't know where it was in some like Elder Scroll wisdom or something, and so there was this voice, this narrator voice, pretty much in what was said, was this voice of human beings were writing a message for the future. And so what was written was something like this. This is I'm just relaying it. What was written was how did it go? The human being was writing a message to the future and was like, we're gonna live for you so that you will live for us. And I thought, what does that mean? And it meant that we do something now that the future finds a way to bring us back. That means right now, it is true, we die, but when I say bring us back, I mean, how do I explain this? Pretty much the past lives for the future, then the future can live for the past. That means the past lives on eternally to the future, you know. You know, some people want to free their mind, and some people, it's as if like nature's like, hey, human being, what are you doing with your mind? You know, and they free their mind from nature. You know, so it's like sometimes just like, I think people should treat it like this. Even young children, you can explain it like this, that the mind is here like a sword and a shield. That means your mind can receive the world. That's how it's shield. You can use. That's where the shield comes in. When something's coming at you, the shield comes. So the reception mode, and then the sword, the expression. So you are a being that can receive and express. Now, how you receive suggests the quality of how you express, right? So if you are simple, you will receive the complex without the egoic construct touching it, right? So for me, it's as if like there's one view. If I have this view, I'm a person talking right now, then it's as if I would be like someone trying to write that's focused on how the pen is moving. It doesn't make sense. When you, after a point, the pen becomes second nature, and it's just words become instant. Okay, never mind. So Daniel says, try to write by focusing on how the pencil. Let me tell you what I'm saying. Whatever you do becomes second nature. When it becomes second nature, it becomes emotional. So imagine you're a person who every day you've written a sentence, one sentence only. Okay, you know. So if you've written one sentence only every day, after a point, you don't think about writing sentences anymore. It's just so second nature to you, right? Imagine for a year, every day you just wrote a sentence and like. You know, so after some point you won't even think about the pen, you won't think about your hand, you won't think about the paper, you won't even need to have your eyes open, maybe just a little bit your eyes open just to see the pen, to just instantly localize it, right? But you don't even need to have your eyes open. Let's say for those people who are writing at night, okay, you can actually write by just having the tip, by having your attention on where the tip of the pen is, right? So if when that becomes second nature, whenever you have an emotion, right, you no longer need to think about writing. The concept of writing doesn't even technically exist, or is not even there. The concept of writing a book or all of that goes away. It's just the person notices an inner event, an inner film that is engageable, and that engagement of the inner film creates a sort of emotions, right? So emotions don't just come from the outer realms in regards to sensations of what happens to the body. And I know, guys, I said I'm going to end this, but I'm going to keep going. In the inner realms, the emotions come from the contrast of how you're a character. That means, imagine you thought you were a great person, suddenly somebody came up to you and said, you're not great, and you were like, oh. Literally, that image went away. It was a conditional greatness. It wasn't even greatness. It was a greatness that could be taken away, you know? That means the greatness was from the outside. It wasn't from the inside, you know? And that's the hilarious thing, you know, in the history, people have been like, what do I do? And they're like, be confident. And they're like, what does that mean? And people have not noticed, it's an inner realm positioning of your own self in the moment. eyes are beyond our words. Our words are like the tip of the iceberg to actual living experiences where true poetry is born out of, or is unfound in the unborn. There's some things in nature that are already being. Like reality is imagination that you don't have to imagine. It's there, so it doesn't take energy. So reality is a convenience. Imagine you were a human being hovering in empty space and you had to imagine everything. Like that would be so much more work for the brain, than just their reality already having a shape and uniqueness and design. It's like, okay, it's like I don't have to keep imagining my body. My body is like moving, changing slower than my mind, right? So it's a convenience. But as you can say, the presence of attention, you could be multi-local. So I am saying it doesn't mean just because a creature is seen to be evolving that it's actually the evolution of a creature. We know that the universe changes. Change means the variables in one snapshot of how the world were are different in the next. So literally the world is like a river, but we're analyzing it in drops and fighting over it. Like it's like those drops might as well be our tears, So the thing is, when you're in a river, there is no. It's as if, like, after some point in life, you're like, okay, I'm just a creature on a rock in the middle of nowhere. What do I deserve? What kind of species do I deserve? What kind of civilization do I deserve? What civilization does everybody else deserve? That means, let's say you were one person and uh, um, here's the thing. The guardian spirit finds us when we feel we are from the hosting energy of the world. They asked one of Napoleon's, like, I don't know, generals or something. Back then, Napoleon was an emperor in France. His stories are in some talks I've shared them, but anyways, it's like as if like one of Napoleon's generals was like, "That's impossible," like just freaking out, you know. And then about like some strategy, and then Napoleon looks at the general and is like, "Impossible is a word in a fool's dictionary." It's like, get out of here, you fool. Honestly, there is no such thing. It's like we're just creatures that are piloting our state of mind based on how much our attention is on our outer realms and inner realms suggests the turbulence of how we move. So then the foolishness is just based on that, you know. These words are just words. It's all like a journey that hasn't ended yet. We don't know if it's perfect or imperfect till the end, really. Like, you don't know how good the roller coaster was in the middle of it. And we're on an elemental roller coaster ride, guys. Come on. And if the mind is like Rene Descartes was right about the mind-body dualism, then it totally explains reincarnation. The mind never dies, the body is endlessly breaking, the elemental realm is endlessly changing. So it's like a person looking at instead of looking at a still pond, looking at like ocean waves hit the beach, and it's like, why can't I see my reflection in the ocean waves, And it's as if because it's endlessly moving in a moving system. You must, in some sense, care for what's moving before you. I mean, let's say like you were walking in a forest. If there was an animal moving, you'd probably stop and watch what the animal's doing and then make a move, right? So people have to have that kind of ability. But guess what? With themselves as an animal, sometimes throughout the day, you gotta find moments where you watch yourself like an animal, like you're watching an animal on a planet. Like, for yogis, self-inquiry was technically Animal Planet, but on the next level. watching Animal Planet. You know, it's like for me, it's like when I look at my biological existence, I'm like, okay, it has appearance value. You know, so it has a shape, a geometric value. But aside from the geometry of manifestation, and then the storytelling dimension made by emotions plus illusion, that's how a story exists, right? Because the emotions are not stable; they're the constant ebb and flow, and the story is like this endlessly shaping thing. You know, it's like we have no way of telling when the universe began, when it ended. You know, even if we have background radiation and the Hubble telescope saw the temperature in outer space and we had theories developed from that, there's no way we can tell. It's literally waking up at the middle of a roller coaster. You know, you're like, when did I get on this? Like, what is this? You know, that's probably how every child being born feels like. Yeah. It's like, what? What if multidimensionality is our birthright, but we can access it through the singular? You can think that this is a broken world and you cry and endlessly try to fix it, and of course I will tell you, like, there's very strong people. It takes a very strong human being to show their emotions. For example, when I saw that UN speech by that lovely girl, she was crying about climate change and whatever. For me, I was like, oh my god, her parents are like, what are her parents doing? You know, like, because the thing is that she is right. She isn't wrong, but you can create endless intensity. I have lived, like, I could tell you, in some countries they have days where people cry. Literally, they cry for the loss of some figure, figure of religious significance. So I'm saying it's not enough to have tears, and it's not enough to shout at the world, stop it! You know, the world doesn't stop. You know, the world is like, minds are trying to constantly release their inner realms and the outer realms. It's just now we need a design management thing. So I would say, imagine if that lovely girl in the UN, she had instead gone in there, and instead of crying, she was like, I have two options. Either the world is going to an imperfect place and I'm gonna shout perfection, tears of perfection, you know, calling to perfection, or we accept that the world is an imperfect place, and instead of trying to cry, you know, the emotional component, I'm telling you, like, emotions are important, but they don't change the mind of 8 billion beings. Because if they could, one person could have changed it instantly. The moment Greta, I believe her name was, the moment she had cried, the world had to instantly change, if that was enough, if an emotional awareness was enough. But it's not just emotions, because the emotions are actually bound to a pattern-like biological behavior. That means people don't realize it. There is no such thing as a work in some sense. You know, it's just occupying space in the space-time continuum as a living event. So I'm saying that it's like when life becomes like something where you're like, okay, we cry over spilled milk, or do we say we use the heart of mankind as the defenses? That means we need more people like that girl in the UN speaking to culture and society, right? But we also need to have this view that it's like, first of all, the earth is okay. The universe is okay. The planet is going to be around. We're not okay. Okay, and animals, sure, animals die, but the way civilizations rise and fall is that whatever happens after human beings are out of the picture, it's going to get restored. So you don't feel, you can't cry about the animals, you can't cry about the world, you can't cry about the planet. None of those things are lost. The only thing we can cry about is what we are missing out in our current lifetime. That means the tourists on this planet, 8 billion tourists on this planet, multidimensional tourists, you know, the civilization being a tourist agency, do you know what I mean? It's just what we're experiencing. The tourist, it can might as well not care for the tourist attraction they're in, you know? You can walk in a temple with muddy shoes very comfortably if you feel you're never going to come back to that temple. Now here's the thing, if a person tries to wear knowledge like a knight with shiny armor, it's like keep your mind like a river and keep the future like an ocean. That way the drop doesn't suffer, you know. So think of it this way. The mind started growing in the body, but the mind grows so beyond the body that the body as a memory in the mind gets stored. So it's as if we can say at the beginning of life, the body is moving the mind. But as the person lives and unravels the sophistication of the human being, the person's mind, it becomes so experientially in tune that the mind, it's a, you know what it is? It's as if like the body is a sphere, the mind is a smaller sphere in it at the beginning of life. Then this smaller sphere gets bigger than the body through its experiences, and then the body is like a memory for the mind. You know? The idea is not to forbid chaos. Chaos and order have been fighting before we were in the room. The idea is to see what the species and the eyes of the species require to see, you know. There's some moments I've gone in my life and it's been alluring, and even people have requested me to go, and just my eyes were, just for a moment, it's as if my eyes had already ran forward in time. And I had kind of seen, like, as if there is, it's like, what does the being deserve? This is the biggest question. Imagine we are, not imagine, like we are human beings. What does the human design deserve? The shaped component of your life deserve? And what does the unshaped witness of it deserve? Anyways, thanks for listening. And I will say it, you know, you can say you heard it from Mr. Within. The only way to live for life is to live for life. And I can't end without saying this quote. Rabindranath Tagore says, I slept and dreamt that life was joy. I awoke and I saw that life was service. I acted and behold, service was joy. I don't know if I said the quote right. Pretty much you at first want happiness, you don't want to do anything for it. You know, you want it at first. Then you realize, or yeah, I think I messed up the quote. I slept and dreamt that life was joy. I awoke and saw that life was service. I acted and behold, service was joy. Okay, no, I think I got the quote right. So that's the thing. First, joy without service is like the desire. Then, if you add joy plus service, that becomes a justified desire. You know? The eyes of our eyes are beyond these eyes. Much blessings and all.